This is AndyTube. In this video I'm going to show you how to wind the bobbin, thread the bobbin case, thread the needle, and use the needle thread to bring up the bobbin thread through the needle plate so you can sew. Okay? Now this is a 466, Singer 466, but this basic method is good for many of the vintage Singer sewing machines. You must use a class 66 bobbin on this machine. This is the bobbin that has the slightly curved sides, as compared to the earlier Singer bobbins class 15 that are taller and have a flat side. You cannot use a class 15 on the machine, it won't work. You must use a class 66. The machine came from the factory with the class 66 plastic bobbin. Some sewists and crafters prefer the older class 66 metal bobbin, which will work in the machine. To get started with the winding of the bobbin here, you want to disengage the stop motion screw. This is what allows you to wind the bobbin without the feed dog or needle bar working. To disengage this, you hold the hand wheel with your left hand and you turn this inner screw to the left until it stops. Okay? You see now, even though I'm turning the hand wheel, the needle bar doesn't work. But this allows the motor to turn the hand wheel, to turn the spindle, to wind the bobbin. Makes sense, right? Okay, so we'll start out with putting the thread up on the spool pin. This machine has two spool pins up here because you can twin needle sew. Spool pin felt. This is a little padding that protects the plastic cover, but also allows the thread to come off the spool at a steady pace without the spool spinning on you, creating slack in the thread and maybe wrapping around the pin. As far as I know, there's no preference as to whether the thread comes off the back side of the spool or the front. I've always just usually taken it off the back. Okay? And the first thread guide that we go to is right here, called the Arm Cover Thread Guide. And to do that, you simply take the thread and hold it taut and put it in the back of the thread guide and pull it into the thread guide. So we're now right through there. Okay? I'm going to lean the machine back and I'll show you the next thread guide is called the Tension Unit or Tension Assembly Thread Guide. This is like the same path when you thread the needle, but here's where you deviate for winding the bobbin. This front part is hooked, so it will keep the thread from popping out. And you're going to bring that thread over to the bobbin winding thread tension disc. It's a little spring-loaded disc that sits on a bracket, and you're going to slide your thread up from the bottom behind the disc and in front of the bracket. That puts a nice steady little tension on the thread while you're winding it. Now, this is the point where I deviate from the Singer instructions. and that's just due to my eyesight. They say to go ahead and put this bobbin up on the spindle here and then thread it. There's little holes on each side next to the center spool, and you put the thread on the inside and out the hole. And I have trouble doing that when it's on the spindle, so I do it, or try to do it freehand, where I can manipulate the bobbin and thread better and get the thread get the thread through that hole. So give me about a half hour here and I'll get this completed. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like with the thread going from the inside out. And pull off, you know, 2 or 3 inches there, and go ahead now, and with that thread facing towards you, go ahead and put it on the spindle. Okay? So I'm ready to wind the bobbin now, almost. I'm going to push the off-on lever to on, which simply moves the tire inside against the back of the hand wheel. So when the hand wheel turns, the bobbin will start winding. Okay. When you wind the bobbin, it's better to use a steady, moderate speed. I know a lot of people just go full blast and wind the bobbin as quick as they can, but I think you're going to get the best results of the thread coming back off the bobbin while you're sewing if you just use a steady, moderate speed. So checking that my thread is still in the guides and behind the tension disc now, I'm going to moderately run the motor for a little bit and then stop to cut off this tail of thread. Okay, now I'll cut that off. And now I'll wind the bobbin to the fill amount that I want. This little adjustable teardrop can cause the bobbin to automatically stop winding when it gets full by forcing the spindle away and the tire away from the wheel. I'm not going to wind it that much because it's just a demo. Okay, so you get the idea. Okay, so when you're done, leave yourself about a 4-inch tail of thread there, and then we'll pull it off. Oh, let me move that back. Now I'll pull it off. Okay, and before I forget, I'm going to hold my hand wheel and I'm going to turn that silver stop motion screw back to the right to engage the little clutch washer. So now when I turn the hand wheel, my needle bar and feed dog will work, and the hook and everything else. Now to put this in here, move this around a little bit. We're going to slide this open. You usually want to have the needle up at the highest point just to keep it away from your fingers. And you're going to take your wound bobbin, and with the thread coming off the top left, we're going to just drop it into the bobbin case like that. Okay, so that when the thread comes off, it's going to turn counterclockwise. Now, holding the bobbin in place with a finger, take your thread and pull it over to the right and into this slot that's at 6 o'clock, right at the bottom. there's a steel spring that goes across the bottom of this, and that's the tension spring. So that slot allows you to pull the thread between the case and the spring, and then you pull it over left until there's another little slot that you bring it out of. Okay? Just like that. And then you're going to drag it across diagonally. If you want to test, you can pull on this a little bit and you'll feel tension on the thread. If you didn't get it in the slot, it'll just pull real easy. Okay? Now go ahead and hold your thread to the right and close this case. And there's just a little space between them that allows that thread to come out. Yay! See? Wind the bobbin, put it in the bobbin case, and thread the bobbin case. Now we're going to thread the needle. And coming back to the machine here, we're going to take our thread off of the bobbin winder tension disc and come back to our thread guard, our thread guide, and it's the same story here, where it comes from the spool through the arm cover thread guide into the tension disc thread guide. Now we have to be sure that our presser foot is up, because that releases tension on the tension discs in here. They're loose. And that allows us to pull the thread in between the tension discs. If you try and do that with the foot down in tension, it won't work. So with the presser foot up, and I want to show you this. A lot of people don't understand this. There's a little silver piece of metal that curves out here, and that's like a slide glide to glide that thread in between the tension discs. You have 3 of them in this model because you can twin needle sew, which means 2 needle threads. Okay, but this guide can help you slide the thread right between the back 2 discs. Okay, so presser foot up. I like to put my thumb on the thread here to put pressure on it, pull down on the thread and lay it on that slide, and then slide it to the left and in. Okay, and it worked again. It's perfectly went in between the back 2 discs. Now we've got to bring it on around and use it to lift the check spring. We're going to use the thread to lift that spring up, and we're going to lay the thread over this little guide finger. And that's what guides the thread through and keeps it in between the tension discs. So again, I'm going to have a little pressure. You can hold the spool of thread or push on the thread any place and just kind of hold it so you have tension. Now I'm lifting it up through the tension discs, and I'm using it to lift up the check spring and pull it over past the finger, pull the thread to me, and lay the thread right next to the finger there. So my thread's in place. It's gone through the check spring and it's through that finger. Now I'm going to continue and go back through the tension assembly thread guide. Okay. Then you want to be sure that it's usually easier to have your take-up spring at the highest point, which is the same as having your needle at the highest point. And now you've got to do your easy threading, what I call the eye. This is a big old eye you stick the thread through right in the tip of the take-up lever, and you pull it up. Okay? And I've got thread that's plenty long past the needle, so I'm going to put the foot down, which reapplies tension on the tension disc, and I can feel that by pulling on the thread now. It raises the check spring, and I've got plenty of tension. So that's usually what people find the trickiest, but you see how easy that was. You can do that. Next, we've got to come down, and there's 3 more thread guides. The next spot is this little loop of metal on the nose cover. That's a thread guide. You see there's a little indentation in the nose cover for the thread. You don't bring it down like this on this model. It comes through here. So hold the thread taut and slide it on the nose cover through the front of that loop. There's a little space there, and come on baby, it'll go it'll go, oh, it was already in there. Okay, so now we're going from the take-up spring through the nose cover thread guide. And we're coming down here. There's 2 more now. This may be a little hard to show you, and that's why I like to use pictures, close-up pictures. But there's 2 more guides, okay? One is the needle bar pigtail thread guide. It's like a little twist of steel wire with a tail sticking out. And the last one is one many people miss, and you'll get a lot nicer looking stitch if you use this. Near the bottom of the needle clamp is a slit or a slot, and that's the last thread guide before the needle. Okay? And you don't want to skip either one of these. These are designed to help get the thread to the needle in the best way and position it for the best stitching. Okay? So to do the pigtail, just take your thread over the top of the pigtail, around behind it, then lift it up over the little tail that sticks out, and it ends up in the eye of that loop. Alright? Then you're going to just continue on here. Hold the thread between your fingers again and slide it into that slot, and then pull it straight down. See how that brings it around, and now it's lined up straight to go through the eye of the needle. And that's what I'm going to do. So come back in a couple hours and you'll see I have threaded the needle from the front to the back. Hey, I got the thread through the needle, and I tend to forget, people don't know this, but you thread the needle from the front to the back. Okay, thread goes from the front to the back, and the needle type for this machine is 15x1 type, and it can use sizes 9 through 18. The top of the needle is rounded, but one side is flat, and that flat side goes to the back. So when you're inserting the needle up all the way, you put the flat side to the back, and then you tighten the needle clamp thumb screw to hold it there. Alright? Now, you want your machine to be center position. This lever is left, center, right. See the needle move back and forth, so you want it in position C for center, and on your width lever you want 0, which means straight stitch. And then all you have to do is hold this needle thread while you turn the hand wheel towards you. The needle will go down, the hook will catch it, and keep tension on the needle thread. As the hook continues around, it wraps around that bobbin thread, and then you can pull that bobbin thread up out of the hole in the needle plate. So now you have your needle threaded. I'll lift this up, and you have the bobbin thread pulled up through the little hole. Okay, and then you just bring the threads, make sure they're between the toes of the presser foot, and you just slant the threads off to the right or left, depending on how you like, and now you're ready to sew. Okay, so for those of you that's all you wanted to see, thanks for stopping by. I hope that helped you. For those of you interested in how to thread the twin needle that this machine can use, I'll show you that now. And it's very easy. This machine can take what's called a twin needle. Has one part that goes up into the needle clamp, but then it has two needles coming down. And I don't have any to show you because none of our machines use a twin needle, but here's a picture of one. Okay, so the threading for a twin needle goes the same except for two small things, which I'll explain. And by the way, it still uses only one bobbin, even when you twin needle. So you have two needle threads, but it still uses one bobbin and one bobbin thread. So you would put your other spool, your second spool, up on the second spool pin. You would still come through the arm cover thread guide, so you got both threads through there now. You bring both threads through the tension assembly thread guide, and here's the difference. You have your presser foot up to release tension like before, but when you slide this thread in, you have to go between the other two tension discs. There's three of them. Usually the first needle, if you use that slide I told you about, the first needle thread will go between disc 2 and 3 in the back. So the second thread you want to put between disc 1 and 2. Okay, they cannot be both threads between the same disc. So when you have it between the other two discs, you still wrap it around. You still use it to lift up the tension spring or check spring, and you lay the second thread over the little finger, bring it back through the thread guide, thread it through the take up lever, and you bring it down through the nose plate thread guide again, and you bring it through the needle bar pigtail thread guide. But there's the second change. You do not put the second thread through the slot. You do not. You bring it straight down and put it through the second needle. When you're using a twin needle, you're probably going to want to run your first thread through the needle on the left, and then your second thread right from the pigtail, skip the slot and down into the second needle on the right. That's all there is to threading the two needles. All right. Hope that helps you. Happy sewing, huh? Easy. You can do that. I know some of you came just for a refresher, and some it may be your first time using the machine. And you can also go to singer/support.com or singer.com/support, and on that support page there's a little search box in the center where you put the model number in, and if you put 466 or your own model number, and then enter that, it'll bring up like the instruction manual in a PDF, and you can download it. And then you'll have all the instructions for using the machine, including all of this I just showed you. Take care. Happy sewing.